Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 180 podcast right here at St. Paul's Bloor Street. We're glad you've joined us today to hear stories of transformation and change in people's lives. My name's Robert Herkmans. I'm one of the staff here at St. Paul's, and this month we've been asking the question, what does transformation look like? How do people's lives get turned around by the power of the gospel? Today I'm sitting down with Dave Addison. Dave is a longtime member here at St. Paul's. So Dave, in every person's story who's made a 180 in their life, there's essentially three parts. There's the direction they were headed, then there's this turning point that happens, and then there's the new direction, the new course that their life is on. Let's start with where you were.
I guess just to lay a quick foundation, born and raised in the church, had a relationship with the church, but I didn't actually know Jesus. My parents took me. I went each Sunday. I was involved in different kinds of serving, but it was really just a thing to do. And so when I went off to university, I drifted away. I had no faith, and I just started my worldly pursuit. It began with education in business, and then a move into a career in business. What happened, I started to find myself in a place of conflict, both an internal conflict with the values of the organization, some of the businesses that I was working for and the people that I was working for put the pursuit of profit ahead of the people first. That conflict then became an external conflict with the leaders, and it was a time where I was in a state of depression, but not really recognizing it. But I was self-medicating with food and alcohol to sort of numb myself and fill that hole in the soul. I ended up 300 pounds and not aware that I was actually a functioning alcoholic. It was very much a roller coaster and a rough ride, not just for me, but for my wife, Tracy, as well.
And that manifested itself in drinking, and you said overeating and stuff like that?
Yeah. The alcohol was there to numb, and it's a slow dance with alcohol. You find it, this elixir, this soothe. It soothes. It takes the edge off. It seems to be solving some of the problems, but then as you build a greater dependence on it, reliance on it, it becomes a problem. And for me, it was very, very much. I was an active alcoholic.
How long could you have stayed on that road for a while? Could you continue to function?
No, a couple of things. Physically, there was an incredible toll on my body. I had high blood pressure. I had gout, sleep apnea. I had fatty deposits on the liver. So physically, my body was going.
Did you bottom out? Was there a moment? Was there a series of moments? What was it that became for you the turnaround?
So what happened next in 2010, in January of 2010, I actually had a psychotic episode, a manic episode, and it was protracted. I had no awareness of a personal history with mental health. I was manic for a number of months, but through that manic phase, I had a massive spiritual awakening, and I was on a quest to find purpose and meaning in my life, and people started to come into my life, very different people than the ones that I was associating with.
Wow.
People who started to breathe into me, people who started to witness to me, people who actually I didn't realize were discipling me, and it was a myriad of people, and such a range. One was a recovering crack addict who lived under a bridge on Eglinton Avenue for a number of years. And another person was a former counselor for the city of Toronto who started to witness and gave me a Bible and began walking with me. But it was on February 1st of 2010, I was just at this point where I was seeking. I knew there was some greater purpose and meaning for me.
Yeah.
And I fell on my knees in the middle of the night, and I just cried out to God.
So you had this knowledge of God, but that really came to the forefront through a powerful episode, but also through these people that God sent into your life.
Yeah.
Kind of working together.
Yeah. And when I surrendered that night, I just called out. I just said, God, take this suffering, take this pain. Forgive me for all that I have done wrong. Forgive me for my sin. And I give you my life. Just take over. And so was there a pivot point? Yes, that day, February 1st of 2010. Wow. And things just started to change in a miraculous way. It was 2 weeks from that, on February 16th, that I had my last drink. I then went into AA, and
though your life was headed one way and you had this dramatic turnaround moment, it didn't mean that that life is now easy.
No.
Right.
No, I had to, then I had to work on and God worked on the restoration of my marriage. My wife Tracy had stayed with me through those years of suffering. Not only was I suffering, but she was suffering with a husband who wasn't present, often physically, emotionally, so it was a painful time in the marriage. So there was restoration there, healing that was needed, and by God's grace, we've just celebrated our 28th anniversary, and
awesome.
Again, only because of His redemption. I actually was on a quest to find a church, and these people who had come into my life who were witnessing started to guide me to different churches. And someone said, and I know the individual said to me, St. Paul's is a place where you can go with a family, with kids, and they can. And I think you should try St. Paul's. And Jenny Addison was preaching, and she said at one point, "Wherever you are on your spiritual journey," and I thought, she's speaking right to me, and I knew at that moment this was my spiritual home. And then I was quickly invited into serving, and it began as a greeter. And then I started helping with communion and leading prayers, and all of this was preparing me for, I guess, my greatest act of service at St. Paul's, to be a trustee. And that was within 2 years of coming here. So only in God's economy would that be possible. Like, I was still a babe in Christ, but I was on fire for the Lord. 2 days later, on a Sunday, at the coffee hour after the bridge, a man walked up to me and engaged me in a conversation. He said, "I'm the vice chair of Toronto City Mission, and our executive director is going to be retiring, and it's not public yet, but I think you might be that guy.
Wow.
Would you consider applying?" I'd never worked for a mission before. I'd never volunteered for a mission. I'd never heard of Toronto City Mission. And then I'm the executive director.
There are bound to be people who are listening to this who find themselves in a situation like you were in, right? Like whether it's you're stuck in a job where you feel you're compromised ethically, or you're struggling with mental health issues, or you're struggling with substance abuse issues, or they've got marriage problems, or all the above, right? Like what, just as we kind of wrap this up, what would you say to that person?
Well, have hope. Know that God can redeem any situation, any individual. Lives can be transformed, and God is still in the business of transforming lives.
Dave, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's an inspiration to me personally, and I'm certain that the folks that are listening to this are going to find it inspiring as well. So thanks for being so honest and transparent.
Thank you, and it's to God the glory.
Well, thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the 180 podcast. My name is Robert Herkmans. If you liked what you heard today, please share it on Facebook or give it a thumbs up on YouTube. If you want to find out more about us here at St. Paul's, you can visit us online at www.stpaulsbloor.org. And we invite you to join us again next week as we hear another story about how God is changing lives today.